Hi, it's Steph, and today we're going to do an evergreen tour. We're going to take a walk around and I'm going to show you some of the evergreens that I have growing in my landscape and why evergreens are such an important part of every garden. Evergreens are such an important component of every garden. They offer structure and really become the bones of the garden, especially if you live in a zone like I do that is a cold climate. I'm in zone 6B in Massachusetts and we get winters. And so in the winter, when everything else looks pretty dormant and dead, evergreens are still looking beautiful. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to share with you some of the ones that I have growing, starting with this big guy right behind me, a Colorado blue spruce. In 2013, when we started planting out these garden beds in front of our home, we had gone to the Home Depot and I found this really adorable small Colorado blue spruce with this gorgeous icy blue color. When we planted it here, I had no idea how big it was going to actually get. Well, look at it now. It is huge. And so it was my mistake. It was a rookie move. I was a new gardener and didn't know better and wasn't really sure that the specs on the tag would actually be true. But they were, and the tree did what it was supposed to do. It grew. And so now it is much too big for the space I have it in. In fact, George has already started limbing it in the back because it was crashing into our home. But because I love this tree so much, I definitely want to have a Colorado blue spruce in my garden for this gorgeous color that it provides. So I actually already bought a backup. And here is my replacement. So this is essentially what that tree had started like, a nice cute small tree in a pot, just like this one. And so when we get rid of that tree, I'm going to make sure that I find a spot to plant this one where it can grow to its full size and be happy. This tree here will grow to be about 20 to 30 feet tall and 6 to 10 feet wide. So you definitely need to give it some space. So this is an example of a Colorado blue spruce that might be 2 to 3 years old. And that one there has been planted for about 10 years and started at about this size as well. And this cutie here is a Nanalutea Hinoki Cypress. It is a dwarf Hinoki Cypress and no camera tricks here. The color really is this beautiful. It's a really vibrant golden color that really stands out in the landscape, especially now in winter. And the thing with this one here, what classifies as a conifer as dwarf is its growth rate. Conifers will continue to grow their whole life as long as they're happy in their growing conditions. But a dwarf conifer grows at a slower growth rate of only 3 to 6 inches per year, where a regular sized conifer might grow upwards of 12 inches per year. This conifer here is called a Blue Atlas cedar, and you can find Blue Atlas cedars in a variety of shapes. Most commonly, you'll find them in a pyramidal shape, which is the traditional triangular shaped tree. But this one here is a serpentine shape. And what they do is when the tree is really young and pliable, they will shape it into these serpentine shapes, which is essentially an S shape, to give it a really interesting look. And I had seen this tree when I was first starting this landscape in someone else's garden, and I just loved it. And I really wanted one for my own garden. So I found it at a local nursery, and this was the first specimen that I sort of splurged on. And I paid a good amount of money for this tree, but it has served us well and it is still alive and looking beautiful. So it was worth the investment. This tree gets a bit more blue in the spring and summer and with the sun and the heat of the season. But right now, because it is winter, it takes on more of a green hue. And it is also looking pretty unruly at the moment with a lot of branches that are just going all over the place. I like to go through in the spring and prune it to keep it a bit more compact and keep the shape tidy. But this is a beautiful tree, and I actually have 2 of them in my garden now. And in a little bit, I'll show you the second one. But moving on to this one right here below my feet. This here is a blue star juniper, and it also has a really beautiful blue color. What's great about this blue star juniper is that it is really compact. So it makes an excellent low growing conifer or evergreen shrub for even the front of a border. That way you can have shorter things in the front and taller specimens in the back. This shrub here only gets to be about 3 to 4 foot wide and about 12 to 18 inches in height. This beauty here is one of my favorite conifers I have in my garden. It stays this beautiful green all year round, and this is called a weeping Norway spruce. It is just a gorgeous weeping conifer, and if you want a conifer or evergreen that stays relatively compact, anything that has a weeping habit generally stays a bit smaller. So this one here gets really beautiful new growth in the spring. It'll put out, the new growth on conifers are typically called candles. So it'll put out these new candles of very light green, almost yellow growth that tend to look a bit like a pine cone, just really pretty. Now this tree here has a weeping habit, but it does have central leaders, and the central leaders are the branches that go upward, and that will essentially determine how tall the tree will be. I have had this tree here planted for about 8 years now, and it was probably about 3 feet tall when I planted it. An added benefit of having evergreens in your garden is that around the holidays, you can cut some of the branches and make some beautiful winter arrangements. I've had these here since early December, and I'm actually getting ready to switch them out with my spring pots pretty soon with some tulips and daffodils, but these still look really beautiful. And here is where I have my second Blue Atlas cedar. I liked this evergreen so much that I picked up a second one, maybe a year or so later, and it's also looking really pretty. And that bronze beauty right over there is called a Forever Goldie Arborvitae. It's got a really beautiful bronze color in the winter, and in the summer it takes on more of a golden yellow hue. Right here in the front of this border, I have another one of those blue star junipers. I really love this shrub because it is low growing and it offers this beautiful blue color. These here I bought as small 1-gallon containers, and it is pretty much full size now. It will continue to grow, but I can prune it really easily. And it's also serving as sort of a ground cover. So in an application like this where you want a low growing evergreen in the front of a border, one of these shrubs work perfectly. The blue star juniper again gets to be 3 to 4 foot wide and only about 1 to 1.5 foot tall. And right here I have a Cypress Boulevard pom-pom. So this was bought as a topiary type evergreen, but you can also size control this by giving it a regular pruning to keep its shape. In fact, I pruned it just recently and I made a video about it. They're relatively easy to prune, and it offers another level of interest with your evergreens by having different shapes and texture foliage. Something to consider when you're adding evergreens to your garden is to try to find some in different colors. So much like you do with plants, evergreens also come in different shades. So here I have this Forever Goldie Arborvitae that takes on this bronze hue in the winter. Right below me I have this blue star juniper, which gives us some blue. I have this green Hinoki cypress, and then there's a gold mop cypress in the corner here. So adding different color components for your evergreens also adds another level of really pretty interest. This beautiful green Hinoki cypress has been planted here for about 8 years as well. It started as a tiny little plant in maybe a 3-gallon container, and it has grown to this huge, beautiful evergreen. I absolutely love the way that it flanks this corner, and what I like most about this evergreen is it has a very graceful arching habit with its branches. So this one has served me well and has looked really pretty in this corner, and I especially love it as a backdrop to this false mop cypress, or this lemon thread false cypress. This yellow mop here I have had planted here for a really long time, and now these will get pretty large if you give them the space. But what I did was I tried pruning it as a topiary, and I actually made a video about that I can link as well, and I've really enjoyed the look that it has taken on as a small topiary tree. In case you've been keeping count, here is my 4th blue star juniper that I have planted in my garden. So I wasn't kidding when I said I really like them. I think they make a great front of the border evergreen. And right behind me is another really pretty blue evergreen, and this is a weeping blue spruce. This one here I planted a couple of years ago when I had a weeping cherry tree that was planted here that was getting a bit too big for its space and had become kind of unruly. And it was only pretty when it bloomed for about 2 weeks in the spring. So I replaced it with this beautiful evergreen that now gives me interest all year round. This one is by Monrovia, and it's called the Blues Blue Spruce. And it is a full sun. It has dramatic foliage color and a weeping habit. So these are really hardy. They're hardy in zones 2 through 8, down to -50 degrees Fahrenheit. And they'll get to be about 5 to 6 foot tall. But just like we talked about with the weeping Norway spruce, any tree that has a weeping habit tends to stay a bit more compact. And so I think this tree will look beautiful here for years to come. Another great application for evergreens is to plant them in containers. This gives you year-round interest and you don't have to worry about planting annuals because you have color in your containers all the time. This one here is called Little Champion American Arborvitae, and it has a rounded habit and it's pretty slow and low growing. I've had these here for about 2 to 3 years now, and they're low fuss. I never have to water them. If it rains, they get watered. Otherwise, they're on their own and they do really well. This here behind me is what you call a borrowed view. It's a beautiful backdrop of green giant arborvitaes. These are actually my neighbors, and this is what they call a living fence. Now, these arborvitae were planted here maybe about 5 or 6 years ago, and at the time they were probably only a 4-foot tree. And look how much they have grown. They're huge and make such a beautiful living fence. And I can tell you that we have a ton of deer in our gardens. In this area, we have deer all the time, and they don't seem bothered by them. So if you're looking to plant a hedge or a living fence, the green giant arborvitae might be a good option for you. We're now in the backyard, and this is my patio bed, and I've only recently started to add some winter interest or evergreen interest to this garden bed. I started with the gold mop cypress or the lemon thread false cypress that you see there in the corner, and I already started to limb it up, and I'm going to also train it like a topiary like I did with the one in my front garden bed. And my newest addition to this bed is this one here. This is a PC pungens glauca, and it is in a standard form. Now, when you talk about standard forms when it comes to evergreens, it just means that they've been grown pretty tall and then they created this pom-pom on top. So it looks like a lollipop. So you'll hear them referred to as lollipops or standard. And because I really love blue evergreens, I thought that this was a really pretty color and interesting shape to add to this garden bed. We're now in my new garden area that I have called my Japanese maple garden. It is a work in progress, which is why you still see some cardboard in the back here that is killing off some of this grass. But here in this area, I've already started to add some evergreen interest, and I have 5 different varieties that I'm going to show you. Right in the corner there, I have a green component with a dwarf version of a Hinoki cypress called Cedar. Because it stays dwarf, I thought it would be a really great addition for this area. Another dwarf Hinoki that I've added is this golden version here, which is called Spirited. And it also stays relatively small and adds a really beautiful yellow element to the garden. Here to the side, I have another one of the weeping blue spruces. I liked it so much in the front yard so that when I found another one, I knew I wanted to add one to this garden as well. So that is my blue component. And right behind me, I have another golden evergreen called a hemlock, golden duchess. And it's also a shrub form, so it's very low growing. It only gets to be about 3 to 4 foot tall and wide. So it's going to have more of a shrub form than a tree form. But it's evergreen and has a really vibrant yellow color. And on either side of the stairs going up to the patio, I recently added these 2 Fire Chief Arborvitaes. They're a round shape arborvitae that only get to be 3 to 4 foot tall and wide. And in the winter, they take on that really pretty bronze color. And in the summer, it has a really gorgeous bright yellow with a little bit of chartreuse and red to it. They're really pretty evergreens. So I think that this area is working out really well with the number of evergreens that we've already added. And I have one other in the corner there that I'm going to show you as well. This beauty here is called a golden oriental spruce. The problem with this one is that the deer also really like it, and so I've had to put a cage around it and protect it. Now, all of the evergreens that we looked at today, and I have quite a few, the deer tend to stay away from, but they were loving this one, and so I've had to protect it with this cage. I also have one of these wireless deer fence sticks that I'm trying out, and hopefully they'll stay away and this can put on some new growth because it's a really beautiful evergreen. And because I love Hinoki so much, I have 2 more to show you. This one here is called Sunny Squirrel, and I just added it last summer. And this one here is also dwarf, meaning that it'll only grow 3 to 6 inches a year, and its full grown size is supposed to be between 6 to 8 foot tall and wide. Now this one here, the characteristic of it is that it has kind of a contorted growth habit. It looks like it's kind of growing in a swirl pattern, but it's a really cool Hinoki and I was glad to have added it. We are now on the south side of my yard, which is kind of a slope, and an area that I don't really like working in. But what I've been doing, because I don't want to garden in this area, is planting things that are low maintenance, such as evergreens. So my hope is that eventually these evergreens will get big enough to cover all of the exposed concrete on the foundation of the home. But for the winter, I wasn't sure what to do with this Hinoki cypress. All summer I had this in a container in my patio and it looked really pretty. But when the fall came and I knew I had to do something with it, I didn't want to just pick a random spot in the garden to plant it. So I just stuck it here for the winter and I'll figure out what to do with it in the spring. But this is a fern spray gold Hinoki cypress and it has a really pretty arching habit and a nice golden color. I believe this one is also a dwarf variety and yeah, it's just a really pretty Hinoki. And when we talk about blue conifers, I also have this blue one here, which is called Gray Owl. And it's a really beautiful blue-gray color, kind of low growing, but it is supposed to get about 6 feet wide and only about 3 feet tall. And I have really been enjoying this one here. And for a green accent, I have a Mugo pine. And I really love Mugo pines. They put on all of their growth in the spring and they have all of these really pretty candles that come up in the ends. And this will eventually get to be about 5 foot tall and wide. Well, I hope that you've enjoyed this evergreen tour and maybe you even found something in my garden that you might want to add to yours. Or maybe you just got the sudden urge to topiary a gold mop cypress. If you did, wait until spring. You don't want to put your shrub into shock. But thanks for hanging out and I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, please hit the thumbs up button and please consider subscribing so you don't miss any of my future videos. And we'll see you soon.